All right, at 6 o'clock, the Administration and Finance Committee will come to order. All 5 members are present. Can I have a motion for approval of the minutes as listed in our agenda?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And then item 2 is the 2021 City of West Dallas Mayor's Recommended Budget. Mayor, Ms. Grill, have at it.
Want to start out? Go ahead.
I don't have a presentation tonight, there was one last week, so we're coming together again to see if people had questions or changes. I did send to everybody the summary of the staff changes and budget notes that we have on each of the pages, but it's just easier to see in a document, so hopefully you have the opportunity to review any of those, all of those things in the document. I don't really have anything to add right now. I don't know if the mayor does.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have a lot other than, I kind of tried to hit on a couple of the high points when we met last. And I wanted to just elaborate slightly on on page well, it's on page 4, but it's on page 2 of my mayor's letter. The work group with the Board of Health and the Commission on Aging and city officials, et cetera, regarding the long-term plan for providing resources for seniors in the community. And a couple of you had inquired about that. It's coming up on the screen. And basically a little backstory on that one is, I think it was pre-shutdown, so I want to say earlier this year. I don't remember exactly what month it was, but Sean and Patrick and I had met with a development group in the Milwaukee area, which is very reputable, solid. They're called F Street Group. And they were interested in hearing about opportunities in West Allis, and we gave them several areas that we were looking to revitalize. We talked about the National Avenue corridor, we talked about the Highway 100 study, a lot of other things. And they sent us a few proposals. So we do have, and again, as you all know, any proposal can fall apart, but we do have a very solid proposal for them. Some of you might recall from the administrative task force minutes last year probably about 71st and Mitchell, and some of those buildings there were very run down, and I think the owner of one or two of those was looking to sell them if the city was interested. And one of the proposals that F Street Group brought to us was about a $25 million project for that entire block, and they were completely open to using about 10,000 square feet of the first floor for a community senior center, potentially using it in the later hours to possibly like more of a community center. It would be a little bit smaller square footage, I believe, than our current facility, but it would also be one floor and brought together completely in one area. And so that's kind of the nexus for that discussion, if that would go forward and get the approvals needed and everything like that. But they even asked in one of the follow-up calls with staff, they said, well, what about the library? Why do we bring the library in? Well, our library is not that old, maybe 25, 30 years old. So that's just an opportunity there regarding one of the strategic goals under number 2. We talked briefly about doing some restructuring in the community development area and trying to get staff there more into their wheelhouse and less having to deal with external projects, and not that they're not important projects, but smaller projects like, things like the neighborhood associations and, other elements there. So I just kind of wanted to elaborate briefly on those two, and then I think we'd be open to any questions, obviously, if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So are there any questions regarding the mayor's comments before I change the subject a little bit?
I have a question. That was around 71st and Mitchell, that entire block?
Yeah, I believe what it was 70, the senior center, and then the buildings east of it, and then going between Mitchell and National. And there are a few homes there, which, obviously that would all have to be discussed.
Right.
West of it.
I'm sorry, yeah, thank you. Not east, because you'd be across the street.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and they priced it out, and of course, the numbers would have to be worked out, but it was estimated to be in the $25 to $28 million area range.
Okay, anything else on that issue? Okay, I have one general question regarding the budget, and we all, of course, see the news and have our social media, and defund the police has been a discussion point. And this is for anyone, and it's clear here, we're not defunding the police. We're funding the police at least the same level as last year. Anyone wish to talk about that some more?
Yeah, I'll just say conceptually, it's not on my radar.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
The actual amounts are greater than they were last year just because of contractual obligations, but I think the only thing that's really less is the crossing guard contract, because we're working with the school district for them to take that over. So we're splitting the recommendation is to split it with them for 2021 because their budget is already completed. And so then we'll do it until June, and then they'll take over in August for the rest of the year. So next year, that will be another thing that would be removed from the police department. But that's the only thing that's less than I know. I mean, there might be a few accounts that have changed around.
Yes, I concur. There's a few minor accounts, like 10,000 less in gasoline, but that's based on historical spending. So we've got a good budget in my estimate. It is definitely not a defund the police budget, and I haven't had anyone approach me or ask me to defund the police, at least city police.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Lysick.
I had asked Rebecca to have our development department and health department here to discuss the major changes and the shifting of housing there, and I want to make sure that everybody's on board in that, and also the neighborhood improvement department that's being set up. So I'd like to discuss those issues. I guess my first question would be to either Mr. Schlosser or Bob from the health department. You know, are you people on board with the structural changes, the shifting of personnel? I know there's a lot of people retiring in the health department. I saw that on your sheet. It's a lot of people from one department. So I guess my question is, are you going to be able to handle this extra work? Do you have the space to do it? And are you comfortable doing it?
That would probably be good for Bob to
Yeah.
start maybe. Do you want to come up, or can we hand these to people? Is that, I mean,
You can sit over here if you want.
Or I can just pull up a chair. So, yeah, Bob Leishow, Health Department. And so the question with regard to the proposed opportunity to have housing come over to the Health Department is really one, frankly, that is in alignment with, I would say, relatively recent public health practice, where we are, as health departments, strategically aligning ourselves to focus on what's called social determinants of health. It's really based on the structure of the foundational public health services. And really, when we talk about health outcomes, social determinants of health get at those root causes. Root causes being things like housing, income, transportation, access to health, things like that. And so we're seeing not just here within our region, but as well statewide and nationally, more and more health departments that are getting more involved in housing and development from a place-based perspective. And so one thing that we can clearly define is that people who are at highest risk of poor health outcomes are those who are living in poor housing conditions and otherwise, have lower income. So really that's the purpose, the mission behind the interest, and I would say the opportunity to have housing more assimilated within the department from that perspective. In terms of capacity, my understanding is that the group itself, the current housing team, would essentially be able to maintain, certainly the current workload that they are currently moving forward with. Of course, without doubt, there's going to be a pretty, I think, significant learning curve with this. We have met with Patrick. I've talked to John in the past as well, but we, as recently as about a week and a half ago, met with Patrick just to kind of lay some of the cards on the table and just kind of talk practically about what is involved in kind of the day-to-day operations. I'm not going to speak on behalf of Patrick, but, I think we would understand that and mutually that if this does go through, we will be working very closely together for at least this next year while we onboard and we assimilate, what has been currently happening in housing into what is, now happening in the health department as well.
And you have the physical space in your facility to accommodate the extra staff?
Yeah, I have high confidence. We can build out some space, cubes, whether that's going to be in the environmental section, which is where logically I'm kind of thinking at least 2 of those staff would be, and then probably the admin person in the front office with the other admin support staff.
The final question I have is relative to reporting to the Community Development Authority, because they are charged with the responsibility of administering or approving all of the housing programs that we have, and I assume you're going to have a designated person that will be attending
Yeah.
the CDA meetings.
Whether that's myself or my deputy, but again, hearing very clearly from Patrick what's involved in that on a yearly basis. My expectation is if this were to happen and does come over, I certainly don't want to set anything up for failure and would not want to experience a complete severing, cutting of that umbilical cord right away. And so, I walked away, from our meeting, our conversation with a high degree of confidence that, we'll, I don't want to say hold hands, work hand in hand, but I think Patrick is agreeable and knows that, we would have a little bit of an uphill learning curve.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chair? I have a follow-up question with that. As Tom had alluded to, you have quite a few people taking advantage of the retirement program. So filling those positions, are the people coming from housing, is it the expectation to potentially be cross-trained? Or are those roles going to be filled?
So the positions that we have vacant now, or coming vacant because of the retirements, are largely skilled
Okay.
nursing positions. I would love to say that a non-skilled or trained nurse would be able to handle some of the operational duties, but there are certain expectations and competencies that come with that
Right.
that role. Just I think the nature of the beast with regard to the way we operate in the health department, we utilize our resources across the board to the best of our ability. So even with regard to the current COVID activity, I have staff who are not clinically trained, one way or another, also supporting our capacity needs, just so we can stay afloat. I can't say, long-term that wouldn't be something, that would be explored. I do have a couple admin staff who are also helping, with COVID. So, I got to be transparent and say, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. Hopefully, by the time this transition happens, we'll be done with COVID. I'm not giving a date. There are those out there that are saying, come January 1st, it's going to be done.
Somebody, say that.
But right now, there will be no plans.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Anything else?
I don't know if, Patrick, do you have any comments on the changes?
I just want to add that I appreciate the opportunity that Bob had to meet with me. I just encourage him to meet with our team. Mel Hoppy, who was our administrative admin, moved up to a housing specialist within the last 2 years. And Amy Moreno just passed her housing certification as a specialist on Friday. So we, in housing, have fairly new staff themselves. And so we've been going through a learning curve since the transition in July when we had our community development supervisor leave. So there is a growth period that we're having not only in our housing division. So there's a lot of questions and we're going through that. And one of the things that I've implemented was that they meet on the phone with HUD monthly so that we keep the program flowing, keep helping our housing participants, et cetera. With a transition like this, I would just strongly encourage that when it goes over to the health department, that they also, there's going to be a learning curve there as well. All the new language, you think the budget book is big, our Section 8 guidelines are even more intense. It is probably one of the hardest federal programs to manage because you have to forecast 2 years out and 2 years back and figure out where you're going to be, and that's how you get your next fiscal year money. So, and we talked about that. Yes, housing is important to our participants, and their health is very important as well. But Section 8 money can only be used for vouchers. It's only a rent assistance program. Right now, we're essentially almost paperless. We may actually make money as a housing authority, so we actually have an operating reserve that's projected to be close to $700,000. So as we've been operating, the program has been effective. So any transition, like you said, you don't want to be set up for failure. I also want to make sure that this transitions smoothly so that we don't have any anxiety issues with staff or now what do we do? We got the baby, now you look at it and go, now what do we do? I remember my son coming home and having that feeling. Now we have this baby, what do we do? It's the exact same thing with housing. There is an element that it needs some supervision in the sense that there's someone that always wants to appeal to a higher person. They don't like what they hear because of vouchers and entitlement or privilege. They have certain perceptions. Communication breaks down, so they also want to appeal. So, Bob might get some phone calls from participants or whoever's supervising the program over there. So somebody will have to make some time. Is this the right time? I know the health department is very busy with COVID. That's just something, I think the move can happen. It'd be effective, but maybe timing might be a challenge. So just because of the learning curve and the resources and bandwidth of everyone right now to make that happen. I think you can probably attest to that with your team too, is everybody's doing a lot. We have a lot of COVID money that came into Section 8 and other federal programs. We're trying to get that out the door. It's just that there's a lot going on in all of our federal programs right now. So I gladly answer any questions.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Vitale.
you know, Patrick, I'm wondering, by moving the housing over at the health department, so I know you're a genius person regarding housing and everything else. You're an expert. So who really is going to oversee that? Who's going to be really on a daily basis? Who the person is going to be answering? If anything that comes up. The person, I'm sure, is an expert just as well, but sometimes it takes a little elevation, some supervision of somebody. So is Bob is going to oversee that?
I think
Maybe
one
he's
of,
an expert
I
in that.
can't,
don't really know.
I can't speak for Bob, but I'm sure he's gonna have a resourceful person that will be a
Okay.
team leader
All right.
in that area, and they will have a learning curve too. When I learned housing, I had to go through that learning curve. It's a process, and we need to pass this knowledge to other teammates so that they can manage it. It's just that it has to be a smooth transition because the money has to flow out every month and to help with people's rent assistance. If the checks don't come, landlords call, and participants get upset. So it's got to happen smoothly, and that's an important aspect.
Mr. Chair, I have all the confidence that the development department staff and the health department staff will work together to effect a smooth transition. This isn't something that has to happen January 1st, where all of a sudden everybody moves over there. I'm sure there's going to be a learning curve, and it's going to take a matter of months, maybe the entire year next year before the whole thing gets accomplished. But I think with the retirement of our development director, it puts a lot more work on the development staff, and this will free up some of their time to spend on development and not have to deal with the housing issues. It is, I want to make it very clear that it's by no stretch of the imagination, because they weren't doing a good job, that we're taking it away from them. It's not the case. It's the case that we have a lot of development going on in this city, and we need to pay attention to it. And with one less person in a department, or actually two less people, correct?
2.5.
We lost one administrative part of
Well, the end
one.
of next year, so.
Oh, end of
it
next-
won't be
okay.
till December.
Okay, so one less person next, yeah, one less person next year. It still was, he was the key person. And so it's gonna put a lot more stress on the other people in the department. So I think it makes sense to do it right at this point in time.
All right.
Sure.
Oh, Alderman
Quick
Stefanski.
question. So you're saying that the housing department, which you guys are the experts of, is going to move over to the health department and be overseen by health?
That is what's being proposed under the mayor's budget.
Any other questions, discussion, concerns? This issue or any other issues?
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Lysick.
I then want to talk some on the Neighborhood Improvement and Community Engagement Department. That is
Nice.
a nice department. That is the new department that is supposed to be set up in this budget. And I have some very serious concerns about doing this. I think looking at this, what we're doing is creating an unnecessary bureaucracy, again, another department that is already handled by other departments. The first person is under this proposal is a community engagement and block grant administrator, which is a full-time position. That doesn't warrant a full-time position. It never has in this city, and I doubt that it ever will. We don't administer enough community development funds for this to be a full-time position. And I understand it'd be doing a couple of other things here, but historically, this work has been done by someone in a planning department. Both Patrick and Christie, when she was here, were incoming new planners that came in and took on this responsibility as part of their job and learned it. It's not rocket science. It can be learned by people that we're hiring intelligent people. So I think that this position should be moved into the planning department. And it's my understanding there's a person there that already has some block grant experience on the planning department staff. And the neighborhood services specialist, I agree with the idea behind the position. But again, we have someone in planning department that has worked in that field for a number of years in the city of Chicago. So I look at this and say, well, we have people on staff. Maybe what we should be doing is having them work in these roles and assume these roles. And if we need additional planning help, hire entry-level planners and not create another administrator where we've got to pay top pay. Because I just don't think the position warrants it. And as far as the other position there, the housing rehab specialist, I'm not sure where that would fit in, if it would fit in with the block grant person, or if it would fit in at the health department, or what. But it certainly can go somewhere else. I don't think we need to build a new department of 3 people.
Thank you, Alderman Lysick. Go ahead, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I don't disagree with any of the comments that were raised, but one of the big focuses I had in this budget was really to try to get people in development and planning into their, I keep using the term, but I'm going to say get them in their wheelhouses and have them not have the side projects or the periphery things going on, and letting them focus on planning, letting them focus on development, and it, you know, it does it's a good point that we do have somebody in with neighborhood association experience. But I just, certain people in that department have really helped facilitate things like the Artscape, the West Allis Living Streets program, the Better Block project, the skate park development. And that's where I just think we have to be cognizant of that when we do this restructuring and try to just make sure that everybody can focus on where their skill set is. There's a lot of talent in that department and a lot of potential in that department. And I think you kind of, like Tom said, it's an opportunity to do this restructuring with the retirement of Director Stiebel. It's not something I'm opposed to, but I just don't want to move things around and then still have a lot of additional projects and things taking away from a planner doing planning or a community development person doing development. And I'm just trying to find a best fit for those types of projects, which I think we all would like to continue, things like that. But, the dog park is another one. It's almost like a special projects wing of that department. I don't know if Rebecca have anything to add or if I covered it or.
Alderman Lysick.
Sure. I'm not looking at eliminating these positions, Mayor. I'm looking at just moving the positions into planning department. So you'd have the 2 extra people that would be assigned to be doing these, except that the block grant administrator wouldn't be doing just block grant. They can be doing planning as well, which is what Patrick did when he started and Christie did when she started. They did both jobs and they did it well. Block grant doesn't require that much time. It does at certain times of the year, but the rest of the year, they can be doing planning work and they're helping out the planning department. The neighborhood services specialist, I understand your desire to get that moving. A lot of that work was done by people in planning and development department. This will give them an extra resource, a person to actually focus on doing it and doing it as a full-time job. And you're right, we need to do more in that area, and I totally support that. I just don't think we need to set up a separate bureaucracy to do it. We can do it in the existing planning department and make sure that those are dedicated positions, that the neighborhood service specialist is the neighborhood service specialist, and the block grant person is the block grant person and planner at the same time. And most communities do have their neighborhood people and their block grant people in the planning department. So I think it's the appropriate place for it. And I do know that our development department some of the people spent a lot of time on some of those programs this year, and it's going to be nice that they don't have to do that. They can spend their time on development.
Alderman Weigel.
Mr. Chair, I just have a couple questions. So this neighborhood improvement community engagement department would have a department head, and it looks like it's 90% paid out of CDBG money. So is that what I'm seeing on the flow chart here? It says, so it's, would their job really be 90% related to CDBG, or that's an allowed use for that money?
That's
That's
an estimate, and they're not necessarily department heads, they're more of a managerial level.
Okay. And these are not new employees?
There's a few vacant positions in that area, that the admin position that is moved, the recommendation is to move the director of development position and reclass it into that. So then that would be a vacant position. And the neighborhood services specialist at this time,
Is
that
vacant.
is also a vacant position.
And I guess I'm hearing two things here. The mayor is saying that we have some people with some special skills that would fit in this, but I think I'd rather see us do the rearrangement, not based on our employee skill sets, but on the actual needs, the programmatic needs of the city and these things. People come and go, as we know. I mean, we're taking advantage of some changes, obviously, but I just don't want to see us tuning a department to our current employee set when we should be tuning it to the city's needs. am I making myself clear there?
Mr. Chair? Yeah, I think you are, and I think, without thinking deeply into this, I think we are, in a sense. I mean, I think we need to have, our neighborhood associations, I mean, partly due to the situation we're currently in, we can't really go out and have meetings with the neighborhoods, but that's stalled. And we've had about 4 or 5, maybe 6 good associations with mostly good to great levels of involvement, engagement, and activism. But there are some neighborhoods that we've had meetings at, and then we just never got to get to the next step. Some have started, and they're just kind of fledgling. They're not getting traction. They're not getting new members. They're not connecting to new members. And I think when we look at everything we talk about in this budget, I think strong community engagement and neighborhood engagement really touches on everything. And that goes from working with the police department, working, with mobile integrated health programs, working with everything that we do. So I think that in a simple sense, we're kind of doing both with this.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Lysick.
The way this organizational chart goes is that this person reports directly to the city administrator, which makes that person a department head. And I don't feel that this position warrants being a department head by any stretch of the imagination. And that's where I have a problem. I think they should be under the supervision of another department. I think it fits in best with the planning department. I have no problem with putting a person in a position similar to this. I don't think I'd call it quite that. I'd call it a planner, block grant facilitator, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm not the HR person that makes up the terms. But I would have that as a working position, and also the neighborhood specialist as a working position under the supervision of the director of the planning department. I just don't think that this person should be reporting to the city administrator. Right. That's too low a level. You're going to end up paying this person a lot of money when they're not worth that. Quite frankly, it's not that, the job doesn't warrant that high of a position.
Ms. Grill.
I don't believe that the idea was to classify them anywhere near a department head. I think the idea was to put them at the managerial level, which you have 2 managerial level positions in the development department. So this would add another one. They're kind of, that position is between department heads and like deputies and assistants, the way that they fit into our structure. I know it doesn't look like that when you see the org chart, but as far as compensation, it would be, it could be set up, the way that they classify is based on responsibilities and who, how much supervision and things like that. So I don't know what, it's not gonna definitely come in at a department head level for sure. The level of responsibility wouldn't classify them as that position.
Well, when they report directly to the administrator, I have to say they're a department head, just like they're on the same level as a Ed or a Patrick or Steve or anybody else here. They're reporting directly to you, and I don't think they should be a direct report. I think they should be reporting to a department head, and quite frankly, I think this department is putting this activity in a silo. They should be working with the planning department on a daily basis, and not a separate entity that's going off on their own. And that can happen depending on who goes in those positions. I'd rather see the working relationship between departments and have this as part of the planning department, so that the planning supervisor, department head can make sure that it's all working together and that everyone is focusing and pulling in the same direction and not overlapping work. I just think it works much smoother that way. Okay.
other discussion on this or any other issues?
I guess I'll have one more comment, and it's just going to be a comment. You see, we have more deputy chiefs in the fire department. We didn't have enough, apparently.
Yes.
Are we just going across the board now on the budget?
Anything you wish to talk about?
Okay, I guess I had a question on Public Works. On page 240, the restructuring is showing a reduction of 6 positions, a reclass of 6 positions, consolidation of 2 positions into 1, which looks like a net loss of 7. If I'm reading that correctly, in the gold box in the bottom left of page 240. In the administrator's little cheat sheet we got, it's not showing any reduction. I understand that 6 of those positions were probably held open, correct?
Correct, well, or retirement.
Okay.
The one that you're mentioning, the 2 positions
The one?
combined at the bottom, that was actually done
This year.
this year. That's why it's really only 6 proposed for
Okay.
2021.
Okay.
And I probably didn't call it out well enough, but the second line in the cheat sheet talks about the reduction of the positions, and then I listed the positions that were proposed to be reduced. It's not in there, it's on the sheet. So the building and sign lead, building and sign labor, equipment mechanic, arborist, and 2 truck drivers. Those are the positions that are recommended for reduction based on retirements or participation in the reduction in workforce. None of these reduction positions in any of the departments have a current incumbent, so there's no recommendation to lay anyone off.
And are we splitting this with these 2 assistant directors? One is kind of electrical and ground, so that's kind of like in charge of the infrastructure, and then obviously operations is streets and sanitation, fleet, and those are 2 existing positions that we currently have people in them.
The one position has a person in it that would be reclassified, and the other.
Upgraded,
would
correct.
be a new one that's reclassified. Sorry, Dave.
So the 2 operations positions that are proposed, the operations one that is going to be overseeing sanitation streets, water division, and our fleet services, that person is going to be upgraded. So there would not be additional position that would be added. So it'd be, this person would be promoted, what we're looking at. In doing so, through attrition, 1 supervisory management position in the water division is going to be deleted by doing that. The second assistant director, electrical and grounds, supervising approximately 44 employees, that was proposed by and it's being reviewed by the structural deficit committee. That's going to be a kind of a combination of responsibilities to oversee the operations on that side of facilities, building and sign, forestry, and grounds and electrical. And then we're looking for a high degree electrical engineer type degree where that person can assist as proposed by engineering through the structural deficit. We attempted before to try to achieve this recruitment. We weren't lucky. We couldn't get a candidate, but hopefully we can try again. And then that individual would assist the engineering department, Peter Daniel's staff, and in lieu of the consultant that's being used, I believe, KL. Thank you. And
For street lighting, and then for general engineering projects?
correct. Yep. So we're trying to do a combination of that. So if that were to come into play, speaking with Rebecca, we have 2 positions that we would help fill that position through attrition, consolidation.
So then you're saving on the benefits for
One of
position
them.
and some of the salary. I think one of the other things that is a consideration, the last time we went through trying to get a position, the electrical engineer, we didn't have a component of supervision in there, and going back to the classifications, when people, when you have a supervision component, there's an additional compensation. So I think our feeling is that we'll maybe get more, at least some people to apply, a better pool of candidates, that position would be more appealing to, because we can't compete with the private sector just at the level of electrical engineer.
So really, the only person we're still trying to hire is this electrical engineer position.
Correct.
All
Yep.
these other positions will be filled with current staff.
Yep,
Thank you.
yep. Thank you.
I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Sure, go ahead.
We probably need to talk logistically if there's going to be any amendments. I don't know when would that be done.
Are you looking for amendments
Now,
today?
or do you want to have a separate meeting for that after the public hearing that's on November 4th, before the,
Yeah, I was thinking that if somebody's, if an alder person has an amendment to bring forward, talk with staff, and we can bring that forward at the public hearing or immediately after the public hearing, would be my suggestion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in the past, the mayor's had a open book day where the public's invited. I mean, obviously, the public hearing is at a regular council meeting. But we've had like a special meeting. I know generally have not been very well attended.
No, it's Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
It's been
Not worth the
not
time.
attended,
Yes,
actually.
yeah.
Like,
I think,
we've had one person in 8 years show up or something like that.
so we're not going to have that meeting. No,
But we'll
I'm
do
not
it.
advocating for it, I was just asking.
Public hearing at the council meetings, I believe.
yeah, since
yeah.
I've been here.
The last couple of years.
We
No.
haven't had a separate, we've had one for employees, but not for the
No.
public.
Years ago, we would do something in room 128. And,
Yes.
And nobody showed up for, I don't know how long. It was,
Yeah, I agree, Mayor. Past mayors have tried to have community meetings and attendance was nil. I mean, if you had one or two people that would show
Yeah.
up, that would be it.
I think
And
one
I
year-
remember Mayor Bell would even went out and had it in a couple of parts of town and to make it more convenient for people, and it still got very little attendance. So it's, quite frankly, I hate to say a waste of time, but it's a shame that, people aren't more interested in hearing what the budget's about and digging into it.
I think we've
That's
had
the way it is.
one resident and one student who
One
had to write a
student, yeah.
paper on a municipal budget.
But, and they still have the opportunity at the public hearing, because we have
Yes.
a public hearing on the budget. This was just I know another outreach that the city was trying to make for a while, but it wasn't successful.
How has the attendance been at public hearings in the past?
Very, very
All the
limited,
same.
Yeah.
almost no one.
And Mr. Chair, I think, to be fair, there hasn't been a lot of controversy in our budgets, which is a good problem to have. I mean, we haven't luckily had to make a lot of very controversial choices or cuts, so I think that's part of the reason for that.
Yes. We run a responsible government. I
Yes.
think. All right. Anything else on the budget? Any issues, concerns, questions? Anything else to properly come before the committee?
The next meeting.
Yeah, when is our next meeting? Well, we're gonna be at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, we're gonna have a special administration and finance meeting on November 4th. That's just before our next council meeting, and it'll be at 6 PM. And the purpose will be to interview a finance director candidate. And that will be in closed session.
For what position, I'm sorry?
Finance director?
And it's not Chris.
Despite our efforts.
Let's play us right.
All right, yeah, again, anything else to come before the committee? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.